I am Susana Marcos. I'm a professor of research at the Institute of Optics, which is a part of the National Center for Research. I'm the head of the Visual Optics and Biophotonics Lab, and I'm the director of the Institute of Optics. Well, I think having the exposure of the different imaging modalities and different groups doing very different things that in some ways may be complementary to your own group and your own laboratory are very exciting. Of course, I think any advancement in health science and technology has a rapid impact on people. And from my own experience, since we work on imaging the eye and delivering new corrections for people, they really appreciate the efforts of scientists, and they really see that as really helpful for society and for themselves. But I think imaging, which is basically looking inside your body non-invasively, is key for the diagnostics in the future. I think we'll go to more and more less invasive diagnostics and treatment, more customized to the patient. And I think imaging has a really key role in delivering that, really making diagnostics more customized and delivering a more comfortable way of diagnosing to the patient. My experience is primarily with the directors of the program, and I think they're really great in inspiring the entire group. In fact, I was involved in the program through Boston members that were related to former or current collaborators of my own. So really I knew that part of the group before I actually joined the program. And I think they're really great in really putting together and advancing this very challenging program. I'm interested because of my background in Boston. I thought the experience was great, and I think this is kind of an experience in a broader sense. I think it could contribute to the program, both because of my previous experience collaborating with Boston and Madrid, and also because I'm the head of a big optical imaging group, and including optical imaging in a consortium that is on biomedical imaging was thought to be particularly strategic and important. No, I'm particularly impressed of the passion that the steering group, the directors of the programs are really putting in, and I think that's very important. I mean, you really need enthusiastic people to make that interactions possible that do not occur even if people are close together. You really need to foster them, and catalyzers are particularly important. And I found a number of those catalyzers in this group. Yeah, I think MIT has this really large experience of translational research and really very successful in bringing the science into economic growth. And I think this is something that, if achieved and if this expertise really brought to Madrid, that will really create an impact. I think people really benefit from the experience, from examples, from ways of doing things that are different on their own ways. It's important, though, that this spirit also doesn't get isolated into the network, but really goes into the administration, because really we need better and faster procedures for example, creating a company or handling the day to day. And I think this is something that we can learn a lot from MIT. The main thought is that really there are groups that you don't know about that are very complementary to what you're doing, and that anyone can enrich from the experience of everybody else. Well, I think what the program can bring to both groups is really increase the critical mass of science and technology. So really, by collaborating together, by visiting and creating this network, I think both sides will benefit from the progress and from unique technology being developed in both sides. Is really making the dish with many more ingredients than any of the groups separately have. Perhaps the most important message to convey is that really this networking and balancing expertises, particularly those from different groups in Madrid and those from different groups in Boston, is really helpful. And before Envision existed at all, I had already these collaborations created from Madrid and Boston, and they have been really instrumental in the development of my lab. So I think it's this experience of two large communities working together what makes the program very special. Yeah, for me the faculty is really one of the important aspects of the program, and really the network that is created. The fellows will come and go, and we actually hope that they can bring back all this expertise and all the experience they gathered in the program back to Madrid, which is really funding the program. But the faculty is there, so I think creating networks and really giving the opportunities for faculties to develop collaborations further is very important, because that will be really the long run, and the people that will stay there while the fellows are training or they move into other projects. This is a very challenging program. In a sense, I think the fellows have the opportunity to really act as faculty, in the sense that they will propose a project, they will ask a question, and I think it's a fantastic experience for someone who really wants to train on how to build a lab and really do something important along the road. On the other hand, it's very challenging because as a faculty you have the experience and you have the resources and you know your area very well. For a fellow that perhaps comes from a different area, it's difficult. So I can understand that they feel kind of pressured, because it's really lots of expectations, and it's a very challenging, although very thrilling project that they have ahead. Yeah, I think if you want to someone get to the patient, really a company is needed in between. What we usually do in the lab is we work on prototypes, we work on the research, more basic aspects, but we cannot do the whole process. We really need to bridge it, and we need to translate it to a company that can then bring the commercial instrument to the patient and to the clinic. So I think they're really the third party that needs to be involved if you really want to have an impact of your research, and not the research just remain in your lab. I mean, you can create, let's say, an imaging device that could be, you know, for anything, but that's not very realistic. You really need to know the problem. You really need to know what you're imaging and what the problems are to focus your instrument. So you really need to be close to the problem to develop something that is useful. And you can only do that if you're close to the clinician, or and you have, you know, patients that you can image. On the other hand, that's exactly true that if you get a patient into your lab and you interact with them, first you have this enriching experience that your research has a clear goal, and that people are there waiting for your new diagnostic tool or your new corrective device that are going to help them or someone along the road. So really getting closer to the patient puts your whole work in perspective. In our laboratory, which is based in the Institute of Optics, which is part of the physics department, we have exactly that experience. We collaborate with clinicians, and we actually receive patients every day in the lab, and we test our developments and our new imaging tools. And I think this is absolutely necessary. You really need to know the clinical needs. You need to have your clinicians and biologists really close to be able to know what to tackle and what's important. So I think the fact that the Envision program really considers that aspect, this multidisciplinary approach to research, is really essential. Yeah, well, I think the fact that there is multiple universities, that there is multiple hospitals, that there is the possibility, although this is much further advanced in Boston, of course, than it is in Madrid, of having some company and enterprise network makes them similar. It's the critical mass I talked about that I think made them very similar, and for someone that has been in both places, easy to handle in that way. Yeah, that's probably really sharing different backgrounds and different ways of doing things is extremely enriching. I actually have the chance of having done my postdoc and a part of my career in Boston. So really the way of doing things, like very interdisciplinary and with you know, pursuing big research questions and having in mind the opportunity for translation is something that I brought into my lab. And I think this is the spirit of the program, right? It's really to try to bring this expertise from Boston into Madrid. So I think this is part of what I've been doing or trying to do in my lab, and that's really trying to make it at a much larger scale. Yeah, I think the first point is really to have very enthusiastic people involved. You also need a critical mass, so you have to do it in an environment where there is science, where there is a number of research institutions, and where there is the possibility to really translate science into the clinic or into the industry. So I think both Madrid and Boston share that big critical mass of people doing science and potentially translating it. Envision is an international program. It's a multidisciplinary program, and I think the aim is really putting together different backgrounds, different expertises, and make something very big happen around biomedical imaging.